Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is U.S.-Israel diplomatic relations. The United States and Israel have always had what is diplomatically termed a special relationship. But the times they are a-changin'. Tensions between Washington and Jerusalem, often kept under wraps and behind closed doors, are visibly emerging. Given the new Netanyahu-led Israeli government, this is a development that should have been expected. The facade is crumbling on the leadership level, quite literally between Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu. We are witnessing serious frustration. Certainly, there was tension between Barack Obama and Netanyahu during an earlier tenure in office, and between Bill Clinton and Netanyahu, also during an earlier tenure in office. Actually, this is the 6th time Netanyahu has been sworn into this office of prime minister. But this time, it's different. This time, the tensions arose before the Israeli prime minister was even sworn in. And this time, there is no attempt to keep it private and a matter simply between leaders. On the diplomatic level, there will be even more friction than on the executive level. It will play out on multiple levels, there's no question about it. That's how tensions emerge. Expect tensions to be between representatives, ambassadors, foreign ministers, and from the State Department. The people who work in the background and beyond the view of the cameras will have much to deal with under the new Israeli administration. On the Jewish level, prepare for almost unprecedented vitriol between certain segments of the Jewish community living in the United States and Israel. Prepare yourselves for a roller coaster of ups and downs and ups and downs. The problem, the root cause of these now and future tensions is universal. It's all about attitude. It's an arrogance that pervades all of these leaders and their top-level underlings. Both Netanyahu and Biden and their teams are convinced that each have the moral high ground. That means that both sides will work to make the other look weak. They will, diplomatically speaking, point fingers indicating that the other side is wrong. The previous Israeli government, the government that began under the leadership of Naftali Bennett and ended under the leadership of Yair Lapid, tried from the outset to sidestep tensions with the United States. They established a principle, in conjunction with the United States, that they would not engage in public criticism. There would be no leaks. There would be no running to the press. They would create a united public front. All disagreements would be handled behind closed doors. And for the most part, their system worked. There were some problems and there were some exceptions, mostly surrounding, by the way, the Iranian issue, which, by the way, is also the amount of tension and the point of tension that will emerge with these governments also, just differently. But those problems, i.e. tensions, did not skew the entire plan. The principle was to work together and make progress, not to turn a friendly relationship into a contentious one. Some Israeli ministers had a difficult time sticking to the plan for the year-plus non-Netanyahu government, and that point where he was not in place, where Netanyahu was out of position. But it did work. Heralding the new year, 2023, will have a return of the Netanyahu and the new old Israeli government he cobbled together. This new old Al-Tanai Netanyahu government will mirror its leader, proudly right of center and unapologetic in its defending Israel, unbending to the will of the President of the United States, who is a very liberal, albeit pro-Israel. The two governments will run into direct conflict. The difference between the two leaders is more than style. It is about substance also. And as a result, we must be ready and prepare ourselves for a very deep, heavy-handed ideological chasm that will emerge between Israel and the United States on the presidential and prime ministerial level. Officially, U.S. President Joe Biden has said all the right things. The president heaped blessings and well wishes on the incoming prime minister. But the Biden White House knows their boss well, and they are quaking. While congratulating Netanyahu in the classic Biden form, he also heaped moral condescension Biden said, "I look forward to working with Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has been my friend for decades, to jointly address the many challenges and opportunities facing Israel in the Middle East region, including threats from Iran." And then the jab, sending moral instruction to Israel. The president added, "The United States will continue to support the two-state solution and to oppose policies that endanger its viability or contradict our mutual interests and values." And then, even more, he adds, "The United States is working to promote a region that is increasingly integrated, prosperous, and secure, with benefits for all its people," he added. "From the start of my administration, we have worked with partners to promote this more hopeful vision of a region at peace, including between Israelis and Palestinians. We aim to continue this important work with Israel's new government under Prime Minister Netanyahu's leadership." Biden's moralizing found a welcoming audience in many left-wing Jewish groups who followed suit and offered their support. Sadly, some added their own caveats. The JFNA, the Jewish Federations of North America, which represents the Jewish communities throughout the United States, actually federations throughout the United States, congratulated incoming Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this way. This is the quote, the official quote: "We have a long and fruitful relationship with the incoming Prime Minister, and we look forward to continuing to work with him and the new government to support the growth and vitality of the Jewish state and to strengthen relations between Israel and the North American Jewish community." That was excellent up until this point. Now it begins to take shape. Jewish Federation's commitment to strengthening the ties between Israel and North American Jewry is an eternal one, and the bonds that unite our two communities are unbreakable. Our love and commitment to the Jewish state transcends any one government, any one point in time, any particular policy or statement. And now comes the punch. This is the JFNA caveat. With this principle in mind, it is important to express our significant concerns over statements and positions held by some members of the incoming coalition, which have serious implications for our Jewish communities. We will continue to make clear the North American Jewish community's perspective on relevant government proposals and to advocate for policies and initiatives that help build a welcoming, inclusive, and pluralistic society. Now, I fear for the future of the relationship between the United States and Israel. And my fear is that once that strong bond is actually broken, it may never be repaired. And I fear for the future of American Jewry and Israel with that, because I think it's very important that they have a good, strong relationship. My hope for the new year is, of course, that my fears will prove to be unfounded. Coming up next, points of view. First up is a column from the New York Post. This column was published on January 1st online and in print on January 2nd, 2023. It was penned by Ronald Lauder, who is the president of the World Jewish Congress. The title of the column is "My New Year's Resolution: Make college leaders wake up to anti-Semitism on their campuses." Lauder begins, "Countless Jewish families welcomed their children home from college this holiday season, giving tens of thousands a refuge from what has become horrifyingly normal behavior on their campuses, virulent anti-Semitism. It's no secret that Jew hatred has exploded online and in our streets the last few years, but it has also embedded itself in our college campuses, leaving countless students feeling unwelcome and unsafe. Among families and friends, Jewish students aren't subjected to doorways with 'Kill the Jews' scrawled on them. They aren't forced to disguise their Star of David necklaces or take a circuitous route to class. They don't have to question wearing a Hillel sweatshirt or hide that they studied in Israel. Anti-Semitic incidents hit new highs in 2021, per the Anti-Defamation League. On college campuses in particular, the ADL tallied a record number of incidents against Jewish students, including epithets and spit hurled at them. Much has been written about the rising wave of anti-Semitism, and at this point, barely days go by without some fresh incident or report. With each new episode, Jewish people have had to become even more resilient, putting out of mind the latest off-color remark. But the surge of anti-Semitism on campus demands a deeper level of concern. These incidents aren't just one-off vulgarities. They are signs of institutional Jew hatred. This is not a small issue, and it is not going away. Our children are being emotionally abused and tortured on campus. Why? Simply because they're Jewish. There is little refuge for them. Many cope by hiding their Judaism, and some, in an effort to prove themselves, actually join the Jew haters. Lowther gives examples of what's going on. He writes, students at Tufts University, University of Southern California, and UCLA have tried to prevent the election of or remove Jewish undergraduates serving in student government. At Wellesley, the student newspaper published an editorial supporting the Mapping Project, a database of Jewish organizations and figures. 9 Berkeley law organizations have prohibited Zionists from speaking at their campus events. When those 9 were outed for their anti-Semitic bylaw, 5 more adopted the same rule. Lowther tells us that even on campuses where Jews are a significant percentage of the population, there are organized movements and official actions against Jews. He writes, even the City University of New York isn't immune to horrific anti-Semitism scandals. At CUNY Law School, the student government recently passed a resolution banning Hillel and other mainstream Jewish clubs. The school chose a commencement speaker who called to eradicate the State of Israel. Elsewhere, a CUNY student group pledged to create programs to challenge and critique Jews. And Ronald Lowther draws parallels now between Nazi Germany and the rise of Nazi Germany, the beginning of Nazi Germany, and the disenfranchisement of Jews in that Nazi Germany, and to what's happening right now. In his words, he writes, this institutional anti-Semitism calls to mind the troubling early 1930s in German universities. In 1933, Nazi leadership passed a law for the restoration of the professional civil service, which removed Jewish civil servants who had not fought in World War I, including 1,200 university professors. Lowther concludes by explaining that as awful and perverse as the scenarios he presented are, there are a few examples, but only examples, and only a few, where colleges are taking the situation seriously. He explains that Colorado State University is doing something impressive. He expressed the hope that other campuses will do the same. He writes, Colorado State made supporting Jewish students presidential level priority, with ex-head Joyce McConnell taking a task force on Jewish inclusion and the prevention of anti-Semitism. The goal to develop a concrete plan for making CSU a Jewish-friendly campus. These individual examples of courageous and compassionate leadership illustrate a broader and more important point. Anti-Semitism need not be the sort of matter dealt with through after-the-fact regrets and pained press releases. Officials can take preventive action and do more to address Jew hatred before it becomes institutionally acceptable. As students return to school in the coming weeks, my New Year's resolution is to ensure our university leaders wake up to the fear and worry of their Jewish students and commit to doing something about it. College campuses are actually laboratories. They're essential laboratories. They help build our future. But when the prevailing sense there is Jew hatred, and when it's acceptable to attack Jews and Jewish interests, and when Jews prefer to disappear instead of fight, we have a situation that bodes very poorly for the near and distant future of Judaism, not just on campus, but in America. I want to thank you, Ronald Lowther. This is an exceptional, exceptional piece. It caused me to think. Next up is a column from the Times of Israel. It was published on December 28th, 2022, and it was written by Guy Goldstein. The column is entitled, Is the Dictionary Anti-Semitic? Subtitled, Did Hebrews Inhabit Ancient Palestine? A deep dive into Dictionarycom's definition for Jew, Israel, Hebrew, Zionism, and of course, Jeroboam. Goldstein is not speaking about our classic dictionaries, like the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, or Webster's, or Random House, or American Heritage dictionaries of our childhood. Goldstein is talking specifically about Dictionary.com. Dictionary.com is the most common site used today for online dictionary queries. It is the site that everyone under the age of 30 relies on. You will be shocked when you find out what Goldstein discovered. I love dictionaries and encyclopedias. I have a huge collection, multiple languages of dictionaries and encyclopedias. I rely on them frequently, not just on Shabbat when I do not use my phone or computer. I've contributed to numerous encyclopedias, and I believe in them educationally. It should be a first stop for all beginning research to learn about subjects. I was shocked by what Goldstein described. Here are just a few examples from this remarkable column. This is how he begins. Dictionary.com is one of the most visited websites on earth, with millions of views per month, and is considered a trusted information source. It is given prioritized page placement by Google around the world as the official dictionary used in Google results. As such, it is one of the single most important information sources in the modern world. So when you hear that Dictionary.com is being anti-Semitic, it's a claim that the Jewish community best take seriously. This claim has once again come front and center in the online Jewish debate as people are noticing and challenging definitions applied to the word Jew. When taking umbrage with a definition, we must first assess the role of a dictionary in the world. A dictionary should be an impartial source, documenting the use of language as it appears in the world. Keeping in mind the role of the dictionary in society and the precise definition given, this incident cannot and should not be treated as anti-Semitic. Sadly, this is indeed an anti-Semitic use of the word Jew as a verb, which is in common use in some communities. It is also clearly labeled as being, quote, offensive, which it is. So in particular instance, Dictionary.com, we're not acting in an anti-Semitic way, so it's settled then, right? Wrong. As is so often the case, an easily disproven claim of anti-Semitism can be used to shield an organization from a much deeper anti-Semitic rot. Diving deeper into the site, it becomes clear that a number of definitions in Dictionary.com which relate to Israel and the Jewish people appear to include misinformation, which is irrelevant, factually inaccurate, or both, which all seem to indicate a particular political, ideological view of Israel and the Jewish people being prioritized over accurately delivering the definition of words. Take, for example, the definition of the word Jeroboam, in which the top definition is seen here. Here is the first definition. The first king of the Hebrews in North Palestine. While the error is subtle, it is clear. Northern Palestine of Israel, circa 900 BCE, has been replaced with N Palestine. This corrected statement is factually inaccurate. Even the most generous interpretation, since the name Palestine was only applied to the region following the Roman conquest of 70 CE. Goldstein concludes with a powerful statement. This Orwellian manipulation of the dictionary to subtly rewrite history by rewriting language based on this demonstrated pattern of political bias, anti-Semitism, and misinformation raises a question which is far broader than just the effect on Jews today. In a time where combating online misinformation and hate speech has become one of the most important issues facing both corporations and governments around the world, is there any room for a critical site such as Dictionary.com to be able to openly publish both? And should this be amplified by Google as a preferred source of definitions? I'm sure we can expect an announcement from the EU, the UN, and the US government and their relevant anti-Semitism czars in short order. Few things take me by surprise on this level and as this piece did. It's remarkable just how much anti-Semitism is in Dictionary.com. Coming up, commentary through cartoons, where pictures tell the story. I'm going to show you 4 cartoons and memes today. This first headline is funny, if only because it is truly a wonder that it does not happen more often. We all know those vending machines with the claws that work like a crane to pick up a toy. It seems one little girl chose to bypass the claw and get her hands on the toys. Or maybe she was just frustrated. Things didn't work out quite the way she wanted. The headline reads, "Girl gets trapped in the claw machine after trying to steal teddy bears." Next up is a hilarious meme dedicated to anyone who has hired contractors for their home. It's a picture of an electric cord going through a PVC pipe. The caption reads, "When a plumber and an electrician don't get along." This cartoon is about some bizarre and very funny what-ifs. It's called Calvin Klein, The Early Years. Calvin is hiding his head and crying, and his mother is saying, "I don't care if Jimmy is getting underwear for Christmas. You're getting a pony." That's funny. And finally, a meme that pokes fun at New Year's resolutions. This meme reads, and it's perfect, "I'm opening a gym called Resolutions. It will have exercise equipment for the first 2 weeks, and then it turns into a wine bar for the rest of the year." In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to embark on his first overseas trip since assuming office. Bibi's trip will be a visit to the UAE. The exact timing of the visit is still being discussed, but it'll be early next week. Diplomatically speaking, this is a significant announcement. It's not that the distance between the two countries is so very short. It's that this is the first trip by a newly installed prime minister will be to one of the countries that signed on as part of the Abraham Accords. That's significant. It's very important. I am certain a trip to Washington will follow almost immediately. Israel's newly sworn-in Minister of Tourism, Chaim Katz, promised to invest in the development of the West Bank. Katz called the area our local Tuscany. Speaking only days after Prime Minister Netanyahu's new government took office, Katz's statement follows through on the coalition guidelines to make the West Bank settlement construction a top priority. It's important to note that several key positions in this government went to settler leaders. So that's going to be a priority in the current Netanyahu government. Ukraine's Air Force Command announced that the New Year's weekend, they destroyed 45 Iranian-made Shahad drones operated by Russia. Meanwhile, Russia continued their intense attacks on Kyiv and other parts of Ukraine early on New Year's Day. This new year in Ukraine was celebrated with numerous barrages of missiles and wailing air raid sirens. Iran's military kicked off its annual drill in the coastal area of the Gulf of Oman near the strategic Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is located at the mouth of the Persian Gulf and is crucial to global energy supplies, with about 1/5, 20% of all the world's oil passing through it in a single day. According to Iranian state TV, this war game operation has been dubbed Zulgar from 1401. Participating in the games are commandos, airborne infantry, drones, fighter jets, helicopters, military transport aircraft, and submarines. Iran's military will also fire missiles and air defense systems. These annual games are war games that go on even as Iranian authorities continue a 3-month-long crackdown on civilians who are participating in anti-government rallies and protests within the country of Iran. Fars, the semi-official Iranian news agency, reported that in the midst of the war games drills, a spy drone was observed. According to the report, Iran's military launched their own drone to warn off the reconnaissance drone that was trying to approach the Iranian war games on the Gulf Coast. The report did not specify the nationality of the reconnaissance aircraft, but Iranian forces have had repeated and similar confrontations with U.S. forces in the Gulf. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described a United Nations General Assembly resolution vote asking the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, to provide an opinion on Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories as despicable. In a video message, Netanyahu said, quote, "The Jewish people are not occupiers on their own land, nor occupiers in our eternal capital, Jerusalem, and no UN resolution can warp that historical truth," unquote. Year after year, Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics, the CBC, publishes its annual population report for the calendar year, this year, 2022, to conclude with the end of the Gregorian year. According to the year's report, 9,656,000 residents live in Israel. Of the residents, 7,106,000 are Jews, 2,037,000 are Arabs. The other 513,000 residents include non-Arab Christians and other various minorities living in Israel. That's a huge number, nearly 10 million. In an important diplomatic move, Azerbaijan will open an embassy in Israel for the first time since the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1992. Israel already has an embassy in Baku. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. For the past 4 years, I've been replacing the term anti-Semitism with the term Jew hatred. I have on numerous occasions written about this, spoken about this, and done shows explaining that the phenomenon today is more visceral, more emotional, and far less ideological than anti-Semitism. On more than one occasion, I am sure you've heard me say that Jew haters today give anti-Semites and anti-Semitism a bad name. Far be it from me to defend anti-Semites, but they had an ideology. Today's Jew haters are, by contrast, merely fueled by hate and filled with bile. The original founders of anti-Semitism, Wilhelm Marr, Edward Drummond, were proud of their ideology. Marr is the person who coined the term anti-Semite. The hatred they defined and perpetuated was distinguished from earlier Jew hatred, which was based on religion and fictions of the Jew. Unfortunately, I think that today's Jew haters have reverted back to that early anti-Semitic period. Hopefully, we will be strong and determined enough to stem this surge of hatred in 2023. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.